Hey, what is up, YouTube? Kolst here. I'm here with Twitch chat as well, and so Twitch can say hello to YouTube. YouTube can say hello to Twitch. As I'm hoping this will definitely be a long video. I'm hoping this won't be a super long video, but because we are trying to speed run this card review, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have enough time to actually do all 100 cards. So that's the goal right now, is to go through all 100 cards, all the class cards that are not Death Knight of the new stuff. So let's just get right into it. First one here. So we're going to go through very quickly. I'll try to explain the mechanics when they come up, and I'll try to recap each of the classes, just say, oh, is the class good, bad, whatever. But generally speaking, like, since we're trying to go fast, like, I'm going to just explain the card and say if I think it's good or not, basically. The first one here, Fierce Outsider, 1 mana 2/1, Rush, Outcast. Your next Outcast card costs 1 less. So 1 mana 2/1 Rush is, you know, serviceable card if you can outcast it. It's a little weird because, like, you're definitely not guaranteed to outcast this, but then you do get this buff that sticks around. It's your next outcast card, not this turn. It could be any time, right? Like later. So if you can discount an outcast card, it's nice, right? But you don't necessarily expect to get it. And it's a little bit low impact of a card, but it's a decently efficient card, right? It gives you a discount sometimes, just doesn't seem super important, but it's fine, right? It seems like an okay card. Next one, Unleash Fel. 1 mana, deal 1 damage to all enemies, mana thirst 4 with lifesteal. I'm surprised, I heard a lot of people were confused by this card. First of all, okay, so we can explain the mana thirst mechanic. Mana thirst just means if you have 4 mana crystals total, then, like, if it's turn 4 or later, then this will give you an upside. In this case, you get in addition to dealing the damage, you deal the damage with lifesteal. This is a Fel spell as well. So basically it's like a cone-based 1 damage AoE with lifesteal, because I mean, a lot of times you're going to want to use this on turn 4 anyway, and if it's before turn 4, you probably don't care about the lifesteal anyway. So, you know, it's a very good, decently good spell. So, because these things aren't amazing, but just being able to, like, use these sometimes just as pings, but also have just the ability to clean stuff up like this. If you can get spell damage, because there are ways to get spell damage, a lot of upside, right? But overall, just, you know, pretty good card, but not crazy because it's relatively low impact. So the next one here, Mark of Scorn, 2 mana, draw a card. If it's not a minion, deal 3 damage to the lowest health enemy. Okay, the problem is, I don't know. This is an arena review. If this wasn't clear by the video thumbnail or the Twitch or anything. But the problem in arena is that your decks are usually about like 25 out of 30 minions. Okay, so this thing very rarely will actually go off. And 2 mana draw a card is pretty bad. It's not unpickable, right? Because at least it replaces itself, but it's 2 mana do nothing most of the time. So not very good, but again, not completely unpickable because you just don't expect it to do anything beyond just cycling. Next up, Wretched Exile. 2 mana 2/3, epic minion. After you play an outcast card, add a random outcast card to your hand. Okay, so I mean, outcast cards tend to be pretty good, and the thing about outcast cards to note, well, the thing about adding a card to your hand to note, is that they always get added on the right side of your hand, which means if it's an outcast card, it's active. So that is pretty nice. The only problem with this is that you just don't tend to have a lot of outcast cards. I see there's a lot of outcast synergy already here, so there's going to be some, but most of the time this is just a river croc. So it's fine, right? You'll take it because it's a river croc, but it's an epic, you won't see it very much. So I mean, you'll be pretty happy to take this for the upside probably, but just expect it won't go off completely all that much, right? Moving on, Baldurai Warband. 4 mana, deal 4 damage. It's a spell. If your deck has no minions, summon 4 1/1 Illidari with Rush. Okay, 4 mana, deal 4 damage. I mean, at least it goes face, right? It's just a little bit inefficient. 4 mana, deal 4 is weak, but, you know. We're not going to even acknowledge the second half condition because it's not real. It's a 4 mana, deal 4. So it's just a kind of weak removal, but it's not the worst card, right? It's just inefficient. Next up, Fellerin the Forgotten. 4 mana 3/3, Battle Cry. Add a random outcast card to the left and right side of your hands. They cost 2 less. That seems pretty good because most outcast cards I'm not actually I don't think there's actually anything that changes this. Most Outcast cards are rather cheap. They're 4 or less for the most part. So you're very likely, if you play this on turn 4, you might not necessarily be able to play them immediately, but you might. But even if you don't, you'll be able to play them the next turn. If you play this on like turn 6, there's a fairly good chance you can play both of them, for example. So yeah, it seems like, I mean, you're effectively getting 0 mana 3/3. If you think about it, it's like 0 mana 3/3, draw 2 cards, right? Because you should be able to use the Outcast cards outcasted very quickly with how this works. And Outcast cards are usually pretty good. So this is just nuts. This is like absolutely insane, actually. This is very, very good. It's not like the most like completely game-breaking card, but like it's a lot of value with a lot of tempo. So it's just, as far as arena, like it's just very, very good. It just seems like an extremely good card, especially with Demon Hunter. It's exactly what they would want. If you can get this card, you will have a greatly accelerated way of going 12 wins. Let's put it that way. All right, next up, Soul Eater's Scythe. This is a 4 mana 4/2 weapon. Start of game, consume 3 different minions in your deck. Leave souls behind that discover them. I don't actually know what that... Yeah, I don't even know what this means. Oh, so it's like you get a 1 mana card. So I haven't seen this card. You get a 1 mana card, so you'll get to choose each of the 3 cards. Oh, that's interesting. So it's like if you want to... Huh. That's really weird, actually. Yeah, it's like some weird construct... You want this in combo decks, right? The idea of this card is that you play it in combo decks, so you can like look for the missing combo piece, right? So, I mean... Yeah, it's probably not very good. Yeah. Because you have to overpay for the minion, and then also like... hold up, let me move this really fast. You have to overpay for the 3 minions, and then you also... A 4/2 weapon in Demon Hunter is actually not very good. So, that's the other thing. Because it locks up your hero power. So, yeah, it's like not unpickable because it's a 4/2 weapon, but you don't really want this, I don't think. It doesn't seem very good. So, yeah. The thing is I think you would still sometimes take it just because it's a 4/2 weapon, but yeah, the effect is negative most of the time. So, yeah. Anyway. Next up is Deal with the Devil. 5 mana Fell spell. Summon 2 3/3 Fell Fiends with Lifesteal. If your deck has no minions, summon another. Why are there so many no minion cards? So these are just like Demon Hunter only has half a set right now. Yeah, so I mean 5 mana 2 3/3s with Lifesteal is not bad. It's not incredible, but it's playable, right? But you'll obviously never get a third one. So it's fine. It's just not. It's fine. Like that amount of stats is fine. It's just it's a little weak to AoE, but it's fine. It's pretty much the end of it. Next up, Vengeful Walloper. 7 mana 5/5 demon with Rush. Costs 1 less for each Outcast card you played this game. So unless you like popped off with one of the other guys, right? With either having that legendary or having that popped off with that 2-drop, you're not gonna have enough Outcasts to make this like super cheap. A 7 mana 5/5 is definitely way too, and you probably won't have that many Outcast cards, so 7 mana 5/5 is way too expensive. Get this down to 5, it's starting to feel kind of okay, and then below that obviously it gets a lot better. But yeah, that's the issue. It feels like this is just a little bit too expensive most of the time, probably. But if you have a few Outcast cards already, like, it's probably okay, right? It's just a little bit... It's not really worth it, doesn't seem like. And then the last one we have here is Brutal Annihilon. 9 mana 9/9. Taunt Rush. Why are they printing more Taunt Rushes? These keywords don't make sense together. After this minion survives damage, deal that amount to the enemy hero. Oh god. Oh, this one's weird though. It has to survive. There's a couple cards in this set I already know that are like this. It has to survive. And then it only deals as much damage as it survives. So like if you trade this into a 5 attack minion, then it deals 5. And then if your opponent just like kills it, right, then it doesn't deal anymore. So yeah, it's a little weird. It's like at the best case, like you're getting some face damage out of it. The thing is like this is on a 9-mana 9/9 taunt rush, right? Like Dig Day is a 9-mana 9/9 rush. That's a good card, right? So like this is all upside, right? It's just you just don't expect the upside to be super significant, but hey, like a Dig Day that also has taunt and also deals maybe 5 damage to the enemy hero, right? It's good, right? It's just, yeah, it's a little weird, but yeah, it's good. Yeah, the ideal thing would probably be to just hit an 8/8 with it, basically. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's a good card. So with that, we move on to the next class. So just to talk about like Demon Hunter as a whole, like yeah, we have the issue that there's just like they had a couple good cards, but there were just a bunch of cards that are too constructed-y, so not great. So overall, this set's probably gonna hurt Demon Hunter a little bit, just because yeah, they have these weird cards that just don't really work in Arena. So, and I know that there are other classes that have much better tools. So with that, we move on to Druid, and Druid, first card, Lingering Zombie, 1-mana 1/1 undead. Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 disarmed zombie. With Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 zombie. Okay. Imagine if they gave this card to Death Knight. I mean, it's really annoying, right? Druid always has like AoE buffs and stuff, and this thing just guarantees an extra hit for it because it's never gonna die, right? So it's just extremely annoying. It's way more stats than you should get for a 1-mana card as well. It's just very, very good. It's the best one card. Probably the best 1-drop ever, at least. For pure tempo cards. Maybe they're better. Maybe like there might be better 1-mana cards, period, but yeah. Best 1-drop ever, basically. Moving on. Chitinous Plating, 2-mana spell, gain 4 armor. At the start of your next turn, gain 4 more. Okay, I know there's some armor synergy in Druid, but I don't think you're actually going to want to be like drafting this kind of stuff. So yeah, you probably don't want this. Move on. So Nerubian Flyer, 2-mana 2/3 undead Battlecry. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, summon a 2/2 Nerubian. So in Druid, you're probably not going to have... Wait, was this 1-drop? This was an undead, right? Okay, so that's a huge combo right there, right? To have that 1-drop specifically. Otherwise, you're probably not going to have an undead, right? On curve, at least. But yeah, the 1-drop will make this work on curve. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, you can play this as a Spire Tank, though. It's a 2/3 undead, which is going to be pretty good. Just as a 2/3 undead, and then yeah, if you also happen to get a free 2/2, which is also an undead. Very good. But yeah, on curve at least, usually just going to be a River Croc, an undead River Croc. But yeah, you know, you take a lot of those cards in Arena. They're pretty good. 2/3s with potential upside. Next up is Wither, 2-mana nature spell. Choose a minion. Each friendly undead steals 1 attack and health from it. Okay. This is a little weird because, like, yeah, you might have undeads, but this card does nothing if you don't have any undeads at all. If you just have 1, it's like 2 mana to steal 1/1 in stats, so it's like a 2/2 swing. It's actually not that bad, even with only 1. Obviously, you would certainly want more, but that could be decent. If your opponent has like a 1 health Divine Shield, for example, that, by the way, and you only steal 1 health, that just straight up kills it. It doesn't pop the Divine Shield, it kills it. So like there's some potential there for stealing from Divine Shields as well. But yeah, you want to have at least 2 undeads most of the time though for this to be like somewhat decent. But it's pretty good in that case, though. Yeah. Just a little bit conditional based off that, but it's cheap, so you can combo it in the mid game potentially. So it's probably pretty good, but you need to have the undeads, right? And if you don't, then it's completely useless. So, but in this meta, you should have a handful of undeads probably, so you'll be able to do something with it. Next up is Beetlemancy. 5 mana, choose 1 spell, gain 12 armor, or summon 2 3/3 beetles with taunt. So sometimes it's nice to have the option to gain a bunch of armor, right? At least it's there, but most of the time you're gonna want the tempo in Arena. So this is 5 mana for 2 3/3s with taunt, which is, you know, similar. Demon Hunter had this, but with life steals. These are with taunt. They're fine. It's fine, right? Like, it's just not super exciting, but it's fine. So it's a reasonable card. It's like pure upside just to have the option of the armor, right? Even though you'll probably almost never do it. Next up is Elder Nadox. 5 mana, 5/4 undead minion, battle cry. Destroy a friendly undead. Your minions gain its attack. It's a little bit conditional. So you want to have you have to be like so far ahead for this to be good, right? Because you need to have an undead minion, which ideally has a decent amount of stats at least. And then you want to have several other minions. I guess this thing will buff itself, right? It doesn't say your other minions or anything. So it should buff itself. So I guess you don't need that many minions, theoretically. Aww. But yeah, obviously you want to have like just several minions on board, including undead, which could be a little weird. But like on turn 8, I guess you could like combo this with a 3-drop undead or something. So yeah, it just seems it's a little bit conditional, a little too win harder, just to be really good. Oh yeah, you're only getting attack, you're not even getting health. Ugh. Yeah, okay. So it's more like it's like a weird conditional bloodlust that you have to, like, bloodlust is already hard enough to trigger, right? So yeah, I missed that. Yeah, that seems pretty weak then. Like, it can work, but yeah, that's a little bit too situational. Yeah. Alright. Next up is Unending Swarm. 6 mana. Resurrect all friendly minions that cost 2 or less. Okay, so I mean, if you have like that undead 1-drop, then you're just gonna get like the most annoying board ever. That'd be kind of hilarious. The 1-drop, the triple 1/1. Because you get all 3 of them back. But yeah, I mean, so how good is this anyway? So like the thing is that obviously like it's all gonna die to AoE, right? Unless you do have like those reborn things, but it's a little bit hard because you don't actually, especially like by turn 6, later on, like you might get a full board out of it, but like on turn 6 you probably haven't played that many 2 or less cost minions, right? Unless you had ways to summon them, but probably not a lot of that. So you're probably not getting that much out of this on turn 6. It seems a little weak, but obviously some decks might utilize it better than others. It's just you would want something to essentially combo with this to be able to like summon something like tokens that actually let you have more of this stuff than you would otherwise have. Like if you were able to summon like a bunch of tree ants or something, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, otherwise it seems, I feel like in the average deck this isn't going to be great. It's a little bit too weird. Next up we have Underking. This is a 7 mana epic undead minions, 6 mana, 7 mana 6/6 with Rush, Battlecry, and Death Rattle. Gains 6 armor. So 7 mana 6/6 Rush is a little bit weak, but not that weak. And you're gaining 12 armor, 6 armor guaranteed, and potentially 6 more armor. The only thing is that, you know, if you actually care about the armor, there's a chance that 6 armor isn't, and rushing one thing isn't good enough. You might die anyway before the Death Rattle actually goes off. That might not work, but usually you'll be able to get the armor. So even though you're playing a slightly understated minion, like, this will prolong the game. It's just that, like, since it doesn't do enough to really reverse a bad tempo situation, right? So it's not super great in that way. but it's okay, right? If you want to pick something to stay alive. It's just I usually don't recommend drafting Druid that way, so I wouldn't value those super highly, I don't think, but it's okay. Just not super great. Next one we have is Anub Rakan. This is an 8-mana 7/7 legendary undead battlecry. Gain 8 armor. This turn your minions cost armor instead of mana. So I mean, it's effectively just a 0 mana. You could really view this as pretty much just like a 0 mana 7/7, right? You get 8 armor immediately. There is the potential for, if you had stored up more armor somehow, then you can do absurd things with this, right? You could like OTK with this, couldn't you? You really could, actually. And construct it, more of a constructed thing. But yeah, so I mean, this really is just nuts, right? Because I mean, if you just want the armor, you can also just play it as 8 mana 7/7, gain 8 armor if you just want armor. That's actually, in the case you want armor, pretty efficient. But yeah, you're also just getting a 0 mana 7/7, so yeah. That's true as well, that you could combo that with this, and that's kind of nuts, because then this will give you more armor to spend on more stuff. So yeah, like there's, yeah, I mean, this is just nuts, right? And yeah, if you have this, then you probably value something like this a lot higher. But yeah, alright, that's a thing. And the last one we have here for Druid, Crypt Keeper, 8 mana 4/6 taunt, undead tag, costs 1 less for each armor you have. And then yeah, I mean, if you also just there's a lot of potential for some of this armor stuff if you can actually pull it off, because you also just make it effectively free with this, or close to free. But yeah, this is just a little weird because, you know, obviously if you don't actually have armor synergy, like actual armor synergy, this is unplayable, complete garbage, right? So you probably, this is the thing, is that it's possible it could work, but some of these cards were high rarity too, and the whole armor druid thing, like, is kind of, it's not going to be a reliable strategy, right? It's just that like, you could high roll it, but it's not reliable. So that's kind of the summary of the Druid, I think, is that they did get a couple really good cards, but then they got kind of a lot of cards that aren't really going to work super great in Arena. But then they got a broken legendary, so, you know, overall Druid package seems pretty good, seems like. That we move on to Hunter. So Hunter, first one here, Ricochet Shot. 1 mana arcane spell. Deal 1 damage to 3 random enemies. So it does have to hit, it's 3 different enemies, right? So it can't just, like, it's not just going to randomly hit the same one 3 times. But the idea with this, obviously, is that you would use this with spell damage. There are some spell damage synergies we're going to see a little bit later, and some of them are specifically around arcane. But overall, it hits, you know, it hits the, it deals 1 damage face. You're a hunter, so you kind of care about that a lot of the time, and then you'll just ping 2 other things. So, not amazing by itself, but, you know, not bad, right? Decent. Seems okay. Next up is Arcane Quiver. 2 mana arcane spell. Discover a spell from your deck. If it's arcane, give it spell damage +1. It'd be a very nice way to pull the exact last card we were talking about. Pull out a Ricochet Shot, and now you have, you know, 6 damage for 2 mana. Pretty good. Yeah, so you are discovering a spell from your deck. It doesn't have to be an arcane spell, so you can pull something else, but also you would prefer to have the benefit of it, obviously, right? But having said that, it's like you have to pay 2 mana for this though, so it's a little bit expensive. Because to be honest, like, it doesn't actually seem like, the fact that you'd be paying 3 total mana for this, it's not like that's bad, but it doesn't make it particularly worth it, right? So I don't know, it doesn't seem like you would actually, especially on an average deck, this probably isn't very good, because it's just, you're paying too much. But you would need to have, it's not like unpickable, but you would need to have some kind of specific idea what you're trying to do with it. Because that could be like pulling out a specific spell that you really want. But yeah, the average deck probably just isn't going to utilize this super well, but it's probably not terrible, right? Especially if you have just like any arcane spell that deals damage, but probably not amazing. Next, but this would be another card that would activate it. This one is Conjured Arrow. 2 mana, arcane spell. Deal 2 damage to a minion, but with mana thirst 6, draw that many cards. So for example, if you actually pulled the other thing, you pulled this out with the other guy, this would then deal 3 damage, and then you would draw 3 cards. So overall, that would be 4 mana, draw 3, deal 3 damage. It's very, very good, right? Not quite tempo efficient, but just, you know, you gotta pay a little bit to draw 3 cards, right? So, yeah. Anyway, in any case, though, this is just very good because starting with turn 6, at the worst case, this is 2 mana, draw 2, and deal 2 damage to a minion, right? So, it's very good. And it just goes up from there with spell damage. So, pretty nice. Moving up, the next one is Scourge Tamer. 2 mana 2/2 undead, Battlecry, craft a custom Zombies. Zombies, if you're not familiar, these are, doesn't really help here, but this was from like the old, what is it, Deathstalker Rexar, where you get to basically choose 2 it'll like give you 2 different discovers of beasts, and then it combines them together. This is a very cool card, because yeah, Deathstalker Rexar was cool, but I didn't get to play with it too much, but yeah. Basically, what you want to do with them typically is you look for things like Rush and Death Rattle and Charge or whatever you can get. Just, you want to combine keywords and just do kind of broken things, because there are some broken things you can get, like Battlecry poison damage or something like that, you know. But yeah. So overall, it should be pretty good. Like, zombies are some things that are supposed to be good, and you should usually be able to get something pretty good with it. Or worst case, you're getting value. So yeah, this should be a good card, and it'll be fun and interesting. So we'll yeah, good card, should be fun. Next one is Shock Spitter. This is a 2 mana 2/2 beast. Battlecry, deal 1 damage, improved by your hero attacks this game. Interesting. So that means each time your hero attacks with a weapon, presumably, because you're a hunter, then this thing will start to deal more and more damage. I mean, 2 mana 2/2 deal 1 is already totally fine, right? Not amazing, but like, it's already good. So this is the benefit of that, is just purely upside, right? You're probably not going to have that much upside all that often, but I mean, you just need one candle shot to just improve this by 3, right? And then this is 2 mana 2/2 deal 4, which is insane, right? It also goes phase, by the way, so yeah. If you have a lot of weapons, I mean, you can just start to like, there's real potential. You have like 2 of these and a couple weapons, you just send everything face and then kill them, right? It's a real thing. So yeah. Oh god, imagine if this was in Demon Hunter, yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is just a very good card, so you'll pick this a lot. It's a common, you'll see it everywhere. So you're probably going to want to be keeping this in mind, actually, to track how much damage this will do, because you should expect your opponents to have it pretty often. Next up, we have Silvermoon Farstrider. This is a 2 mana 2/3 minion Battlecry. Give all arcane spells in your hand spell damage +1. So they have to be in your hand at the time you play this. How many arcane spells are you going to have in your hand? Even if you draft arcane spells, how many of them are going to be in your hand on turn 2? Probably not very many, right? But, you know, maybe you have a couple. It's pretty good. But it's another one of those in the category of 2 mana 2/3s that just have somewhat weird conditional upside. But, you know, there's some arcane stuff in this set with, you know, offering bonus for the next couple months, so should be pretty good. Or it's at least decent because it's a 2 mana 2/3 is what I mean. Next up, we have Haldoran Brightwing. That doesn't look like Brightwing. 3 mana 3/4 Battlecry. Give all arcane spells in your deck spell damage +1. So that one's funny, because I mean, you're probably gonna buff more things because it's your entire deck, right? But also, this doesn't buff the ones in your hand. So it might be worse sometimes, but I mean, hey, it's a 3 mana 3/4, right? So even if you don't draw any of the arcane spells, I mean, it's a 3 mana 3/4. Right, so probably okay, but you probably just don't expect too much upside out of that, right? With that, we move on. Keen Eye Spotter, 3 mana, 3/4. Another one. Whenever your hero attacks a minion, set its health to 1. This is a common as well. So basically, if you happen to have a candle shot or any weapon really, then I mean this casts Hunter's Mark every turn that's alive basically. You know, scare with the subscription. Welcome back, I should say. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you probably aren't always gonna have weapons, right? So this is a little bit weird, but if you do, I mean, you probably win. So probably 3 mana 3/4 is already pretty good, and this is a significant increase on that. So I think you give a pretty decent amount of value for this. You know, unless you just know you won't have weapons. Next up, we have Eversong Portal. This is a 4 mana arcane spell. Summon 1 4/4 links with rush, improved by spell damage. And these are beasts as well. So yeah, if you happen to if you happen to be able to buff this up, it's really nice. But a 4/4 rush is fine. Not super amazing, but fine, right? It's just decent. You probably won't get too much more out of it, but as is, it's pretty alright. Next one we have, let me check, is this the last one? This is the last one for Hunters, Hope of Quel'Thalas. 6 mana, 4/2 weapon. After hero attacks, give your minions +1/+1 wherever they are. Okay, I actually never saw this one before. That's pretty good. So you get half of a you overpay for the weapon, right? Like a 4/2 weapon is honestly sometimes a little expensive at 4. So you're overpaying by quite a bit, but hey, getting a +1/+1 hand buff, if you have a wide board, that's already going to be worth it immediately. And yeah, basically getting half of a survival of the fittest for rather cheap is very good, right? So it's just, you want to either be winning or you just want to be trying to play the long game and get a lot of value out of this. But in either of those cases, this will be very, very good, right? It's just, if you're, it's just a little bit risky, because if you're losing, it's just going to be too slow. But overall, it seems pretty good. So for the recap for Hunter, yeah, Hunter, I mean, they got some weird constructed things, but like, because the whole arcane package, but they're all like pickable arena cards, right? So, and there's like really none of these cards are bad. They're all just like kind of fine. So yeah, Hunter got a really good set here for sure. So if anything, this is the sketchiest card, but this is a legendary, and this is not a bad card. So yeah, like maybe the Arcane Quiver is the worst card, but yeah, Hunter got it. Really good set here. So with that, let's move on to Mage, which I believe also got a good set. Let's check it out though. So Arcane Bolt is the first one. 1 mana, arcane spell, deal 2 damage. Mana thirst 8, deal 3 damage instead. So 1 mana deal 2 is, I mean, fine, right? Like, you'll take an arcane shot, for example, right? That's pretty much what this is. If you do happen to wait until turn 8, this deals 3 damage, which, I mean, it's not it's not an amazing upside to just be able to deal 1 mana deal 3, because 1 mana deal 3 to a minion is a pretty normal card at this point, right? So it's not amazing. It's you have to wait a long time, so. But I mean, this is starting out as a playable card, so this is fine, right? It's most of the time just arcane shot, which is a little weak, but you know, totally fine. Sometimes you just want removals, right? So kind of reasonable. Next one we have here is Arcane Worm, which is a 1 mana 1/2 battle cry. Add an arcane bolt to your hand. So this is I mean, I think this is a bit better than the arcane bolt, right? Because you just get a 1 mana 1/2 for free, and then you also get the arcane bolt. So yeah, just anything that does this, generally speaking, in Arena tends to be better than you would think, just because just having a 1/2 might make your opponent trade into it, might let you do a ping, so you don't have to like spend 2 mana pinging or something, right? It's just like having a free 1/2 does something. So it's usually so this card should be pretty nice, and it's a battle cry as well, so it's not like you're not very likely to get like screwed over by the fact that you just don't have the removal immediately, because you will be able to add the card to your hand immediately. So pretty nice, pretty good card there. Next up we have Magister's Apprentice. It's a 2-mana 3/2. This is Sorcerer's Apprentice, the original Sorcerer's Apprentice, the card that had to get nerfed to 4 mana, but it only works on arcane spells. But there's a decent number of arcane spells. There's a lot of them in this set, and then there's also just other ones that existed. I don't know exactly about this rotation, how arcane heavy it is, but you know, there's a decent chance that you'll get some benefit out of this, right? Especially discounting the 1-mana ones to 0 can be pretty cool, but yeah. Still, you probably don't expect that much value out of this, right? But it's already a 2-mana 3/2 and it's all upside, right? So pretty good card. Yeah, it's anti-power creep, true. Next up, we have Prismatic Elemental. This is a 2-mana 1/3 elemental. Battlecry. Discover a spell from any class. Excuse me. It costs 1 less. 2-mana 1/3 Discover is already good. And then this is, effectively, this is a 1-mana 1/3 Discover spell. It's probably, it might be it's a little bit weird, because, discovering mage spells is probably better than discovering random spells. But, you can also just get things that you're not supposed to have, right? Completely unpredictable from your opponent, because they're going to have absolutely no idea. But, yeah, I think opening it up to all classes probably increase the chance that you completely whiff, because there's spells that just don't work, right? You can't play a shield slam as a mage, most likely, right? So that makes it a little weird, but you're getting a very efficient card out of that, so no one's ever going to expect like the turn. What do you even say? You can brawl on turn 4 or something, right? There's just things that'd be really funny, but yeah. So it's Discover, it's good. This is what we've learned. So let's move on. Next one is Arc Splitter. 3-mana 3/2 Death Rattle. Add 2 Arcane Bolts to your hand. So, yeah, you have to pay. This one you're getting 2 Arcane Bolts, which is nice, right? Some value. But you're paying for it, because a 3-mana 3/2 is pretty darn bad. But so overall, it's not really. And the Arcane Bolts aren't really mana efficient enough to really make up for playing a 3-mana 3/2, it doesn't seem like. So you would want, it's not like this is terrible, but you would actually want to have some kind of synergy with the Arcane Bolts to really make this worth it, either making them 0 mana or just having spell damage at least or something, just to make them a little bit more efficient. Otherwise, this doesn't really seem quite worth it, but it's fine, right? If you just want to have removal, you want to get a bit more value, then this does do it, right? It's just a little bit slow, so it's a little bit sketchy, I think, but not a terrible card. Next up, we have Vast Wisdom. This one is a 3-mana spell. Discover 2 spells that cost 3 or less. Swap their cost. I can't imagine that swapping their costs. So potentially you can get a 0 mana or a 0 or 1 mana thing with a 3-mana thing, and then play the 3-mana thing really cheap. But you've already spent 3 mana on this, so a little bit weird, right? That kind of might just help forgive you for paying 3 mana to do nothing to do this. But yeah, overall, you probably don't care too much about the swap, right? Because if you do swap a 1 and a 3, for example, then you're probably never going to want to play the 1 that you swap to a 3, so it's a little bit weird. So overall, it definitely seems a little bit expensive, but, as we've talked about, Discover is usually good, because there's just things you'll be able to do. Issue with Mage is that, there are the secrets and stuff that will litter down the pool a little bit, so makes it a little bit potentially weaker, but there also might be certain spells in the pool that you really want, so yeah. Overall, it's a bit of a greedy value card, but there's gonna be really good things you can do with it, so it seems pretty good, most likely. It's just it is a little bit slow, but it's probably something you can make work, at least somewhat reasonably. Next up, we have Energy Shaper. This is a 4-mana 3/5 Battle Cry. Transform all spells in your hand into ones that cost 2 more to keep their original cost. So it's like a mini version of that legendary spell that used to plague Constructed for a while. So the issue is, you know, kind of a similar thing. Like, you might have like really good 1-mana spells and then they turn into secrets or something, right? Or just in general, like, you might upgrade them. They might transform into just weird things that aren't cards that you would actually draft, right? Yeah, that's true. This transforming the coin's actually really cool. But yeah, overall, it is good with Fast Wisdom. That's very true, actually. Yeah. It's just a little bit weird because you're not getting that much of a theoretical benefit. Obviously, you can high roll it, but you can also low roll this pretty damn hard, potentially. It's going to depend on exactly what spells are in the pool, and you're going to want to be aware of that with this. But it's risky to transform things that you chose to draft into things that you didn't. Into just random things. It gets kind of sketchy. So honestly, you would have to look at the exact spells in the pool, because there's going to be like certain things that you're going to want to exactly evolve into. You can always evolve into a 7, for example, right, to try to hit Flame Strike, for example, right? You'd have to just be aware of exactly what is in the rotation at any given time. But overall, it's probably fine. Like, the thing is that you're also, if you don't have spells, it's a 4-mana 3/5, and then it's not good, so it's probably a little bit too weird to really be like a super powerful card on average, but people will pick it just because it's Deck of Lunacy, right? So, and yeah, at least you can like potentially transform a coin, so it has some upsides, but it's a little bit weird. Next up, we have Vexillus. This is a 5-mana 3/5 elemental. Your arcane spells cast twice, so seems like a rather weak legendary just because it's rather conditional. I mean, you can potentially do some things, obviously, if you can like have the discount on the arcane spells as well. But you're just not going to have enough arcane spells probably to make this really worth it. I mean, if you do have just like any kind of value generating arcane spells, it could be good theoretically. But the other thing is that this thing costs 5 mana and you just have to play them on the same turn, because this thing, if you're playing this with, I don't know, 3 mana worth of arcane spells on turn 8, then this thing's probably going to die. So you're not getting any more. So it just seems like it could work, obviously, if your opponent just doesn't have the ability to kill it. But most of the time, it's just not going to do enough, right? So, doesn't seem great. Next up, let's use this. Okay, we have a couple more. Arcane Defenders here. Summon 2 5/6 golems with taunt and can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. So, pretty nice, I guess. Can't be targeted. You probably it's somewhat relevant, right? You probably don't care that much, but it's nice. And a 5/6 taunt can't be targeted by spells or hero powers would be like a really good 5-drop, right? So for 8 mana, you're getting 2 of them. You have to pay a little bit, but very good, right? I mean, if you just happen to stick this guy somehow, then you win. But yeah, it's a pretty efficient thing. Anytime you have like expensive stuff that just gives you a bunch of taunt, it's usually really good, and this makes it even a bit more resilient just because it can't get removed by, you know, targeted spells. So seems rather good. So you just might not want this necessarily. Even in like an aggressive deck, it's fine, but like, you know, it's not the highest upside for an 8-mana card, is what I'm trying to say. But it's good. Next up, we have Grand Magister Romoth. This is the last one, right? Yep. 9 mana 5/7 Battlecry. Recast each spell you've cast in this game that didn't start in your deck. I don't know if there's any. Well, obviously any Spell Discover works with this, right? And there's going to be Spell Discover, so that can work. The thing is that targets are going to be random, obviously, so that could be a little bit weird. But there's some potential for this, obviously. It feels like usually though, most decks this probably isn't going to be amazing. But, you know, you only need to discover 1 flame strike for this to be good. But it's going to be kind of a bit deck dependent, it seems like, so. Because you just aren't going to know really if you're... some decks just won't really be able to use it properly, but other ones would be a super win condition, obviously. It's just a little bit weird if you have targeted spells that you discovered. You discover a fireball or something, shoot yourself in the face, and yeah, it could be awkward, but you know, usually should be a pretty good amount of value. So overall for this, for Mage, they got a little bit too much as far as this, like, you know, synergy based stuff for it to be a great set for Mage, but I mean, they got a couple okay cards too, right? A couple good cards, so not a terrible set for Mage, but not great. Now let's move on to Paladin. I know Paladin has one of the best sets here, so let's talk about it. First one is Feast and Famine. 1 mana, give your hero +3 attack this turn, Mana Thirst 4, and Lifesteal. So, yeah, so, I mean, it's just really good, right? It's 1 mana, deal 3, effectively. The fact that you have to attack with your hero once you have 4 mana crystals gets completely negated by the fact that you get lifesteal anyway. You might still, I mean, if you're killing something big, you might still take more damage than you do, but it's still pretty good, right? Just seems like pretty efficient card. Compared to a lot of the other 1 mana deal 3s, this one can go face, because it's just attack on your hero, right? So that's a pretty significant upside. Probably a higher upside than just the fact that it might cost you health, I would think. So, if anything, I mean, I would say that, I guess lifesteal with the weapons could be good, but honestly, I would view it as a downside that you have to use it with the weapon, right? But yeah, it could be good or could be bad in that way. So, because I mean, what I mean is that you can't hit one thing with a weapon and then also use this in the same turn. But yeah, it's a good card. Decently efficient removal most of the time, so pretty good. Next up we have Flay of the Bronze, which I'm probably gonna be making videos about banning this card. But yeah, this is, I don't know what this is. 1 mana, discover a dragon. Mana Thirst 7, summon a 5/5 Drake with taunt. Just why? Why does a 1 mana discover a dragon need to come with a fucking 5/5? Why? We just move on. I mean, this might be one of the best arena cards ever made, like ever. So, because even like you think about it, like, you know, Emerald Explorer was at the time one of the best cards ever. And this is, you wait until turn 7, you wait 1 more turn, right? But then instead of getting a 6 mana 4/8, you're getting a 1 mana 5/5 with the same discover effect. Just like, okay. Let's just move on. We have Sanguine Soldier here. 1 mana 2/1, Divine Shield, Battlecry, deal 2 damage to your hero. So 1 mana 2/1 Divine Shield, just really good. Scarlet Crusader is 1 more attack. It costs 2 more mana. The fact that you deal 2 damage to your hero, you probably don't care very much. But you say only 1 per deck. The thing is, this is only a rare though, so. Anyway, you probably just don't care that much. It's just a really good 1-drop, so you probably take it in every dark. It's just really good as a tempo minion. Just move on. Next one is Blood Matriarch Liadrin, 2 mana 3/2. After you summon a minion with less attack than this, give it Divine Shield and Rush. So the idea would be obviously that you hand buff this, and then it just gives everything you have Divine Shield and Rush, and then you win. It does work with hero power, yes, because it's a summon. So yeah, your hero power is gain Divine Shield and Rush too. So you're always going to be able to. You might just play this on turn 2, and your opponent will use whatever removal they have because they'll be fucking terrified of it. But yeah, you'll always be able to like potentially. If you just have like 2 mana 2/3s or something, there's some value. Your hero power has some value, but you probably won't expect too much crazy value out of this then, right? But you know, it's nice. It's a 2 mana 3/2 compared to just like random 2-drops with upside. This is probably it's pretty significant upside and not that hard to unreasonable to pull off, right? Because you have minions, right? So if you have the way to like mass summon dudes, you can give a whole bunch of rush too. So because it is just summon, it's not play. So yeah, you can get some decent value out of this card for sure. Next up, we have 4 Quel'Thalas. The thing that would be interesting is if you have a Warhorse Trainer. I wonder if you have a Warhorse Trainer on board and you summon a dude, if it works or not. I feel like it would. I'm not sure, actually. That's going to be important, actually. I wonder how that works. I would guess it does. That's terrifying. Anyway, 4 Quel'Thalas. 2 mana Holy Spell. Give a friendly minion +3 attack. Give your hero +2 attack this turn. So 2 mana deal 2 is okay. I mean, it's not particularly good anymore, but like obviously you want to do this. Ideally you have like a Divine Shield minion that you give attack to, right? But if you just have anything, this is an aggressive minded card, right? The idea would be that you have a Divine Shield minion on the board, you just hit him in the face with this, and you remove something with your face, and then you usually do it. You think it wouldn't work? Maybe. I hope so. This is terrifying. It'd be important to know, but yeah, overall, so like this is an aggressive card. It's kind of like so you have to like have a board to pull this one off. So it's like the ranked spell, the Paladin ranked spell, kind of. It's just like a little bit different than this. It's a little easier to pull off because you only need 1 minion. But it's also just like a bunch of damage that you can put into the opponent's face if you want to. But also more flexible for removal because of the hero attack. So overall, I think it's pretty good. It's just, you would value this a lot higher in a more aggressive deck than you would. Like, you wouldn't value this very high in a defensive deck at all. But in the type of Paladin I play, I think this is a pretty good card. So I'll probably pick it decently, but it's not like crazy. There's better cards in the set, like this one, for example. Seal of Blood, a 3 mana Holy Spell. Give a minion +3/+3 and Divine Shield. Deal 3 damage to your hero. Who cares if you're dealing 3 damage to your hero if you're getting a Blessing Kings and a Divine Shield for 3 mana? Like, why is this a thing? It's just, I mean, it's just nuts, right? Like, obviously, ideally, you have initiative with it. You put it on a minion, but I mean, even if you just play this on turn 5 with a 2-drop, like, you're still getting insane value, right? So, but it's obviously a bit worse if you don't actually. If you're off board and you have to use it that way, it's a little suboptimal. Weak to removal, silence, all that. But I mean, if you get this proactively on a minion, you probably just win. So that's that. Next up, we have Daring Drake, 4 mana, 4/4, rush, dragon, battle cry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +1/+1. So there are ways to discover dragons. They still have Bronze Explorer. They also have the new Dragon Discover card, which is super broken. And so there's a fairly good chance you can actually get a dragon. But again, like, it's weird that they have so many 4 mana 4/4 rushes in this set. I don't know why. It's very weird, but yeah. 4 mana 4/4 rush is fine. 4 mana 5/5 rush is very good. So, you know, pretty good card. So activates other dragon synergies potentially as well. Like, Descent of Dragons isn't going to be in this rotation, but could come back in the future, so could be pretty good. Next up, we have Time Warden, 4 mana 3/5 dragon, battle cry. Until the end of your next turn, dragons you summon gain taunt and Divine Shield. Why? Oh god. I hate it. It doesn't work on itself though, right? Please tell me it doesn't work on itself. I hope it doesn't work on itself. Anyway. Well, yeah, so, I mean, there's a fair number of dragons, so, I mean, getting, like, Taunt Divine Shield on a rush, for example, that's insane. Yeah, like, it seems like you're gonna have, like, a decent chance of having dragons. Obviously, since it's only a 4 mana 3/5, you wouldn't want to take it by itself, but it's probably enough upside that you're just fine with it, you know? You want having the Taunt shield is really good when you're if you just want to like play dragons, because then you just want to not die, right? And then you'll win on value. So it's very good with the strategy there. So good card if you can pull it off, but obviously you can't always pull it off because you're just not always gonna have the dragons, but you probably will a decent amount of time. Next up we have Blood Crusader, 6 mana, 5/5 epic minion. Battle Cry, your next paladin minion this turn costs health instead of mana. So the only thing with paladin, it's only paladin minions, so like it doesn't work with like neutrals. You can't cheat out like the 10 mana 8/8 Death Rattle other 8/8 guy, you know, like, so there's like you can't always really do this very well, and a lot of paladin minions are small. But I mean, if you're cheating out like a 3-drop with this, it's already really good, right? 6 mana, 5/5 and a 3/4, lose 3 health, assuming the health isn't a problem, like it's already good. So you probably just don't expect too much out of this, but I mean, dude, if they ever have this card in with the 8 mana 8/8 rush that summons a 5/5 every time it attacks, Templar Guardian or whatever, it's gonna be terrifying. But that's totally reasonable. That's like 18/18 in stats on turn 6. But a lot of the time it probably just won't do that much, but sometimes obviously, you know, it'll have its moments. You could play, for example, an Anachronos. So yeah, if you have the Colossal, there are things, right? But like most paladins probably aren't gonna have huge paladin spells minions, I don't think, but a lot of them will. Enough of them will. Anachronos, 7 mana 8/8 dragon, Battlecry, send all other minions 2 turns into the future. So from my understanding, the way that this works is it's kind of like you put out, you can imagine it's like making everything dormant for 2 turns, except, I mean, they all pop at the same time, right? But they also, they're not actually dormant, like they just disappear and they just come back. So there's no like death rattle or interaction or anything, like, and they don't get silenced or anything, they just come back exactly as they were 2 turns later. So I mean, you can imagine this seems pretty nuts, right? Because you guarantee, like, whether you're, I guess, like, you just wouldn't play this if you're winning by a ton, probably. Although it's not like you couldn't, right? You could just attack with everything face and then just play this. But it wouldn't be ideal. You play this if you're losing, and you play this if you just want a 7 mana 8/8 and you just want to, like, you imagine your opponent just clears you, plays a thing, and then you just play this, and suddenly for 2 turns you're winning. So yeah, I mean, it's not gonna always get you out of every situation you're in, but it does, I mean, it does a lot for just 1 minion, right? And you can discover it and stuff. So I think it's not like crazy good, but like it's good. It is very good. You would be very happy to have it. And that is it for Paladin. Yeah, so Paladin just got some really, they got like just the most broken card to ever exist in this mode, basically. And then they just got like really good tempo. So yeah, Paladin's going to be terrifying. So with that, we move on to the next one, which is Priest. So Priest, the first one we have here is Undying Allies. This is a 0 mana shadow spell. After you play an undead this turn, give it Reborn. So wait, does this only work once? This only works once, right? So you just get Reborn on 1 minion. That doesn't seem great. Let me cheat and check. Like, is there something specific you actually want to combo this with? You want to combo this with Haunting Nightmare specifically. Okay. If you do it with Haunting Nightmare, that's really good. But otherwise, I mean, it's not really worth it, probably. I mean, getting a 0 mana Reborn's okay, but it's just not. It's conditional that you have to have an undead, so it just seems a little bit weird. Like, you'd have to really have like a couple Haunted Nightmares to really feel like this is worth it, I would think. But Otherwise, you might just be reborning a random undead that just doesn't really do anything. You'll just get pinged off or whatever. But it's fine. It's just like the 1-mana reborn. There's a 1-mana reborn spell that works on anything, not just undeads. It's not very good. So like, the fact that 0 mana helps, but it's probably still just not that good, I would think, unless you have like specific combos. Next up, we have Animate Dead. This is a 1-mana shadow spell. Resurrect a friendly minion that costs 3 or less. So that's random, right? So I mean, I guess it's fine, right? You're only paying 1 mana. You probably don't expect much, but you're only paying 1 mana, so you're just getting like, maybe you get like a 2 or 3 drop for 1 mana. Maybe you just get a 1 drop and you're just kind of sad. Because if you get a 1 drop, it sucks, but if you just only have 3 drops, then sometimes you can do that, right? You can also potentially combo this with the Haunting Nightmare as well, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I guess it's fine because it's not like you can't play it on curve, obviously, but you usually get, yeah, there's like things you can do with it, so it's probably fine. There's some upside, but probably not super exciting for the average deck, but it's not like it can be that bad, you would think, most of the time. This is anti-synergy with something like this, for example, which is the Crystal Smith's Cultist. This is a 1-mana 1/2 battle cry. If you're holding a shadow spell, gain +1/+1. So getting a 1-mana 2/3 is very good, but you're not going to be holding a shadow spell all that often. So the spells in this set are shadow, a lot of them, but you're still just not going to be holding a shadow spell that often, it would seem like. So this is a little weird, but if you have some shadow spells, sure, you can get a high roll sometimes. It's just that like getting a 1-mana 1/2 by itself is just not very good, so it's a little bit sketchy. But in the right deck, it could be a good 1-drop. At least sometimes. Next up, we have Mind Eater. This is a 2-mana 3/2 undead death rattle. Add a copy of a card in your opponent's deck to your hand. Another one of these cards, totally serviceable curve minion. Although I think 3/2 is going to be a little weak because of the 4-mana neutral volcanic potion. But still, I mean, you're getting a card in your opponent's deck. You might get their win condition, could be very good, right? There's Priest. I don't think in this rotation they have too much, but sometimes Priest has really good synergies with stealing stuff as well. So yeah, on a 2-mana 3/2 draw a card, very good. Draw a card that's your opponent drafted. Next up, we have Haunting Nightmare. 3-mana 3/3 undead death rattle. Haunt a card in your hand. When you play it, summon a 3/3 copy. Try to go relatively quickly through this card because there's been a lot of discussion about this one. And it's like, so the thing with this is like, it's a lot of stats, right? You get a 3/3 for 3, which isn't great, but it's not that bad. And then you potentially get another 3/3 relatively quickly. But this has to die, and then you have to haunt a card in your hand, and then that card in your hand actually has to be played. So if you don't hit your natural curve play, you might have to play off curve to actually get the value out of this quickly. Otherwise, you might just be waiting for a while. You might also hit something really big, and then you just can't play it for a while. And then, you know, by the time the 3/3 comes out, it might just get value traded by something and not do much. So there's some potential, you know, there's synergies with this thing, like the 0-mana spell, for example. There's some ways to like actually make this work beyond that. And if you have multiple of these too, then like you're not getting value traded too much. You can't get value traded all completely off, right? So you'll get a lot of value. So there's a lot of good things, a lot of bad things. Overall, I think it's like a pretty good card. But I don't think it's amazing because it's just the risk of just not getting the soldier quickly is a little painful, I think. But a lot of the time there's a lot of potential high roll because of the synergies, but also just, yeah. So I think it's pretty good overall, but probably not. I don't think it's amazing on average, but you know, it'll have its moments. Next up, we have Bone Caller. This is another card that synergizes with the Haunting Nightmare. 4-mana 2/4 taunt, death rattle, resurrect a friendly undead that died this game. It'd be a little weird with this because if you're not able to kill this off, then you can't play this on curve because this is gonna die first. Could be a little awkward, but usually shouldn't be a problem probably, but yeah. It's a little weird because you absolutely have to, you know, you need synergy for this. A 4 mana 2/4 taunt is completely garbage, but not that hard to pull off, and potentially you could only play, you can like tutor this, or not tutor is not the right word, but like, you know, you could only have big undeads potentially and get something really big, right? If you get a really small undead, it's not worth it, but you could potentially do some really nasty things with this. So overall, yeah, it's just a little bit deck dependent. I don't think you would want to draft it super highly just prospectively, but you know, once you get a couple good undeads, then go for it, right? Next up, we have Grave Digging. 4 mana shadow spell, draw 2 cards, costs 1 if a friendly undead died after your last turn. So again, with this mechanic, they could have died, like your opponent you could have played an undead and your opponent killed it on their turn, or you could play an undead this turn. Or if you have an undead, you can also just like trade it off and then it works, right? So obviously 4 mana draw 2 is extremely expensive, but 1 mana draw 2 is extremely inexpensive. Very good, right? And it should not be that hard to pull this off. The only thing is that sometimes even spending 1 mana is a little difficult, right? Because it forces you to play even just a little bit off curve, so it can be a little bad, but you know, you should have enough undeads that like shouldn't be too much of a problem, right? You don't have to, you'll probably have enough that you don't just have to do it like the first time. You can wait until you have the mana a little bit later, so it should be pretty much just a 1 mana draw 2 with a little bit of condition on when you actually get to play it, but you know, it shouldn't be too big of a pain point. It should be just really good most of the time. So seems like a good card. Next up, we have High Cultist Basaleff. 5 mana 3/5 Battle Cry. Resurrect all friendly undead that died after your last turn. Okay. So yeah, that one's a little interesting. I guess it's like the similar condition, but you can get multiple undeads theoretically. That's probably never gonna happen, to be honest. Like, but there's not that much there. But I mean, if you can just summon one good one, right, then that's really, really good, right? And there's no condition beyond that. You just have to have had at least like a 3-drop. If you just have like a 3-drop undead, then this is already good, right? So, and yeah, there's potential to get multiple, although it seems like that wouldn't happen very often. But yeah, it's not that infeasible to get like 2 mid-sized minions on this as well. So it seems like, yeah, like you can probably make this work pretty consistently, I would think. So it would actually probably be a lot better than you would think, but it's still a little bit conditional, obviously. You need to have the undeads, but I think you just will right now. So probably pretty decent. It'll probably be worse in future rotations when the offering bonus is off and stuff. Okay, we have a couple more here. This one is Shadowward Undeath. 5 mana shadow spell. Deal 2 damage to all enemies if a friendly undead died after your last turn. Deal 2 more. So that would mean it actually deals the 2 damage twice, right? It's not just 4. Or is it just 4? Wait, deal 2 more. There's a period separating, right? So I think it does the damage twice. So like it'll go through Divine Shields and stuff, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's not just 4 at once. I think it's 2 plus 2. But anyway, yeah, so 5 mana Consecration's a little too expensive, not super good. Consecration's even not a great card anymore. But yeah, when you get 2 Consecrations for 5 mana, that's really good. So yeah. Good card. It's just a little weird, like you might not actually being able to trigger that when you actually want to do the AoE is really weird, right? Like that might not work exactly. So it's going to be awkward in that way. It's not like it's, I mean, sometimes you might, but it's not going to be necessarily worth, like, you could theoretically, like, kill off your own undead minion. Play a 1-drop undead, kill it off, and then do this. You might have to at some point, but then you're spending 3 cards. So yeah, that's the thing, is like it's really good if you can pull it off, but it's just, that's a hard condition, because to actually time that with an AoE, that seems hard. But you could do it, right? Like, you just know that, okay, you have a sense that, I think next turn is the AoE turn, and then you just play your undead that turn. Even if you're playing off curve, right? Because you know you're going to AoE anyway. So it's probably not that bad, actually. So I think it's pretty good. It's just a little weird sometimes. It's going to be a little weird sometimes. You have to, like, plan with it, but I think a good player can actually plan to make it work. So the last priest card we have here is Sister Svalna. 6-mana 6/6 undead battlecry, permanently add a Vision of Darkness to your hand. A Vision of Darkness is a 3-mana discover a shadow spell, which you can just do forever. So basically you just get completely infinite value, but the value you get is extremely expensive. So obviously just having a straight up like guaranteed win condition from value is something that's worth something, right? But it's just, it's very slow, so not always gonna be great. But it is, like, you know, 1 card slot to have just like a slightly understat minion to just completely lock in one of the main win conditions for Arena cannot be that bad, right? So seems pretty good, just especially in a more tempo meta. It's not going to be great most of the time, but yeah, some games you'll just win. So yeah, anyway, I guess priest. So priest, I don't think it's like as good as like Paladin was, for example, but yeah, they got some good things. So just some of their stuff's a little situational around the undeads, but it's probably not too big of a problem, especially right now with this rotation, with the all the new stuff having the offering bonus. So with that, we will move on to Rogue. Rogue, first one here is Shadow of Demise, a shadow spell, which is each time you cast a spell, transform this into a copy of it. So usually, I mean, there could be some weird things, like not all spells you want to play twice. I mean, you don't want to play like a sprint twice, for example, right? So this could be a little bit weird sometimes, but you know, usually spells are good cards. You're gonna want to, you'll be happy to have 2 of most things, right? So yeah, there'll be things you can do with this. So it should be good, because again, like, usually spells are some of the best cards in your deck, so you just do it, I think. So seems pretty good. Moving on to the next one, Doctor. Oh yeah, concoctions. So concoctions we have to spend a little bit of time to explain, because concoctions, this one is a 1-mana 1/2 battlecry, add a random concoction to your hand. What are the concoctions? So concoctions, like, these are all basically 3-mana spells. This one is summon a random 3-cost minion. This one is destroy a random enemy minion, deal 3 damage, add a class card to your, add a card from your hand for another class, cost 3 less, draw 2 cards, or, oh, that's it. So, but if you are able, the idea would be, they're all like kind of okay, you know. The idea would be, though, is that if you get 2 of them, then they combine, and then you still only have to pay 3 mana, and then you get like just something like really efficient, because you get 2 cards for 1 effectively. So the idea would be that you have more than just 1 concoction card, you want to have multiple. And this one's a 1-mana 1/2 that gives you a concoction, so it's already pretty efficient, right? Any 1-mana 1/2 that gives you something decently efficient is going to be good. And then, but it's going to be way better the more concoctions you can get, and we'll be talking about more of those rather quickly. But before we do, the next one here is Ghostly Strike. 1 mana, deal 1 damage, combo, draw a card. So it's kind of like a Mortal Coil, but you can use it to pop Divine Shields, but you have to combo it, so you can't draw with it on turn 1, right? So it could be a little bit awkward in that way, but a lot of times you'll use this. Since it's 1 mana, you might just give up the combo to combo something else as well. It is possible, but yeah. A lot of times you'll just play this as a cheaper Shiv, so pretty good. Moving on next to the Ghoulish Alchemists. This one's pretty good because 2 mana 3/2 undead Battlecry. Your next concoction costs 0. This would be very nice because I mean obviously getting a 3 mana discount in general is good, but this is a way to kind of activate the concoctions if you only have one, because they're not super tempo efficient by themselves, right? But like for example, this shows a couple of the mixed concoctions you could have, right? Where you do just 2 effects at once. You get that for free, it's nuts, but even if you know, just are able to get a single one, then it's a lot more efficient when it's free. So as well, this is your next concoction 0, but it doesn't say this turn, right? It's just period. So it lasts for the entire game until you use it. So just very, very good. You're probably going to have concoctions because like this guy, for example, is a common, so you expect to have significant upside out of that. So it seems very, very good. Next one we have here is Potion Belt. So this is 2 mana, discover 2 concoctions. I do think this is nuts. I was watching another reviewer. That reviewer also thought this was nuts because there's only 5 concoctions, so you can get pretty consistently what you want, right? If you already have a concoction, it would be worth noting that I believe like the first one would combine with the one you already have, right? So you would care about which one you actually hit first. But if you don't have any concoctions, then you just create a double concoction immediately, right? So for 5 mana, you get 6 mana worth of stuff, basically. And then you have, you know, potential to combo with other stuff as well on top of that. And I do believe you can actually hit the same concoction twice, so you are not like, you don't actually have an inflated chance of getting a specific thing you want. Like if you just wanted Deadly Shot, for example, it is possible to like get the same one twice. So you could, you know, you could draw 4 cards, you could do 2 Deadly Shots for 3 mana. Like there's a lot of things you can do. So it's just yeah, it's just it's extremely efficient. There's synergy that makes it even more efficient. Just a very good card. Another very good card. Potion Master Putricide. 2 mana 1/4 undead minion. After a minion dies, add a concoction to your hand. Yeah, and by the way, that says after a minion dies. That does not say your minion. That says any minion. So if your opponent plays a bunch of Reborn Rushes, oh god. Yeah, so I mean, you could actually like overdraw for this. Like, like yeah, I mean, this is like a hell of a win condition because you just need like one turn. You could like potentially play this on turn 2, and then your opponent might just be screwed. But also, especially if you have like 1-drops trading or something. But also, you could just play this later on some turn that you're trading a bunch of stuff, and then you get like 3. You get like potentially like 5 of them, right? Like 2.5 full concoctions already. Like it's just an absurd amount of potential. There's like no way you don't get value out of this, right? I guess unless you tempo it and it dies immediately, but otherwise you'll be guaranteed to be able to use this and get value basically. So yeah, just nuts. Next up, we have Rotten Rodent. This is a 2 mana 2/1 Battlecry. Reduce the cost of all Death Rattle cards in your deck by 1. It is an undead and a beast. So you're probably not gonna have that many Death Rattle cards in your deck. This only hits your deck, doesn't even hit your hand. So it's kind of garbage most of the time. It's like even if you had like 8 Death Rattle cards in your deck, this is still probably bad. Yeah, in standard you can shadow step this and stuff, but yeah, in arena this is kind of just garbage. That's probably why it's so weak, is because you can like shadow step in, build around it and construct it, but yeah, in arena this just doesn't, it's not worth it. Next up is Vile Apothecary. This is a 3-mana 2/4 undead. At the end of your turn, add a random concoction to your hand. So you're guaranteed to get one immediately, and if this sticks around, you keep getting more. You're giving up a stat for this, but a 2/4 is kind of okay, right? Like, it's not the end of the world, and you're getting good cards that you can potentially, if this does stick, you know, with no other synergy at all. There's all the synergy, but also even with no other synergy, if this sticks for 2 turns, then you get, you know, a double concoction. That's probably really good for you, right? So also just very, very good. I guess it seems like, I guess it's better than a 1-drop, but I mean, it's like weaker than like a couple of the other concoction cards, but yeah, this one's also still just very, very good. So, you know, good card. Next up, Noxious Infiltrator, 4-mana 2/5, poisonous, battle cry. A friendly undead died after your last turn. Deal 1 damage to a minion. What that means is that if this is what that means is that if a friendly undead died after your last turn, this is a 4-mana 2/5 poison that also casts Assassinate, basically, right? It doesn't work on Divine Shields, but, you know, mostly. So, I mean, that's just insane. A 4-mana 2/5 poison is already, it's not aggressively great as far as pushing damage, but I mean, tempo-wise, it's extremely good. And yeah, like, getting a free Assassinate on top of that is extremely good. So it could be a little tricky because you might not necessarily pull off the undead have the undead die at the exact moment you want to, but you can also just play this. You have to, right? Like, I mean, it's a card that's extremely good sometimes. It's completely nuts, like win the game sometimes, but also never bad. So just a good card. Very, extremely, extremely good. Next up, we have Scourge Illusionist. Is this the last one? This is the last one. 4-mana 4/4 undead. Death Rattle. Add a 4/4 copy of another Death Rattle minion in your deck to your hand. It costs 4 less. It's interesting. It's like a 4/4 copy. I've seen a lot of people talking about this card being completely nuts. It's a 4/4 copy. It's a little bit weird because well, I mean, I guess like if you hit a Proto Drake or something, I don't think that card's even in, but it's like it would go down to a 4/4 and cost 4 less, but it would be like a 4-mana 4/4. But it's a Proto Drake, so you get a 4-mana Proto Drake regardless, right? So I guess that would still be good. And also, if you hit anything small, it goes down to like 0 mana, right? So you just get to play it immediately. It's a Death Rattle, so a bit of a delay, but yeah. It's never bad. I mean, the only time this is bad ever is if you don't have any Death Rattles in your deck. But otherwise, it's just always good because you're only giving up 1 stat compared to vanilla for this, and then you just get like probably a very cheap 4/4 with the Death Rattle upside, right? So yeah, pretty damn nuts. So okay, I guess like I don't know what to say because every one of these cards is nuts except for the rodent, obviously, right? But everything else, these are like, some of them are better than others, but these are like, this is like one of the best sets probably ever any class has ever gotten, I think, because it's just all, it's all really good. So okay, that, I guess we'll move on to Shaman. So Shaman, the first one here is Scourge Troll. This is a 1-mana 1/3 undead. Death Rattle is given to this minion. Trigger twice. This is a weird thing, because there's other ways. If we're just reviewing right now, like we haven't gone over any of the Death Rattles ways you can give things Death Rattles, because now you're like, what does that even mean? But there's specific ways you combo this. So, but overall, it's a 1-mana 1/3 with, it's going to be very specific combos that you have with this, which is going to make it a little bit inconsistent. But you know, there's some very specific combos that would make this completely nuts, that you would be very willing to draft this. Like, for example, Deathweaver Aura. 2 mana shadow spell, give a minion death rattle, summon 2/3/2 zombies. Overload 1. So, if you can... The thing is, if you play this later on, you are paying 3 mana for this, so it's not actually that great. And it's a little vulnerable to like AoE, like the neutral, you know, the broom thing. But if you do like pull this off, I mean specifically, right, this combo, if you do this, you win. Right? But otherwise, and in general, if you activate this on turn 2, you probably will just win. But otherwise, it could be a little bit weird. So I think it's a little bit conditional in that sense. But you know, you really want to have 1-drops. Is really the only thing with this, and then it's going to be strong. Next up, we have Shadow Suffusion, another way to give Death Rattle. 3 mana shadow spell, give your minions Death Rattle. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy. So for this, like, I mean, I don't know. If you hit 2 minions, I guess this is okay. Kind of. You really want to hit more. I mean, if you hit a bunch of minions and they don't have some way to like mass silence you, then you kind of win, right? But I gotta say, like, as far as like when harder cards go, because like this is so much easier to pull off than a Bloodlust, for example, right? Because the Bloodlust, you have to have initiative with all your minions. It costs 5 mana instead of 3. For this, you can just spread and then play this for 3 mana potentially in the same turn as well. So this actually seems relatively good in that sense, but you want to have, you know, some way of spreading beyond even just having your hero power. But if you do have that, this seems actually pretty darn good. It's just you do need to have a bit of the combo there, I think. Next up is Unliving Champion. 2 mana 3/2 Battle Cry. If a friendly undead died after your last turn, summon 2/3/2 zombies. So a 3 mana 3/2 is not very good. There's a few of these in this rotation right now, or in this set. And this is another way to spread really wide. And, you know, people are going to have undeads where, this thing was not an undead. Oh, this thing is an undead. This thing also summons undeads. So there are some of there's some internal synergy with some of these cards. And then, yeah, I mean, if you get, this is a lot of stats for 3 mana, obviously. The issue is that, I mean, again, it's very vulnerable to AoE anyway. But if they don't have the AoE, you kind of win, right? Again, it's just kind of gimmicky because, yeah, like people have like the broom and stuff, and you're just gonna get wrecked sometimes. But yeah, obviously, yeah, synergy with all this stuff, so it can work. It's just kind of gimmicky right now, I think. Next up, we have Prescience. This is a 4 mana shadow spell. Draw 2 minions for each that cost 5 or more. Summon a 2/3 Spirit with Taunt. How many 5 or more cost shadow spells? 5 or more cost spells do you actually have in? Oh, minions, not spells. Okay. Okay. It only draws minions, which is not good actually, and you'd actually rather draw spells usually, assuming you actually have the spells. And I mean, in a normal deck, your deck is only going to be like 20% minions that activate this at best. So you'd be lucky to get 1, 2, 3. If you get 1, 2, 3, it's pretty good. Like, the thing is that that's just not even guaranteed. You're pretty likely to not get one at all. So you would have to play this like way later on and just, you know, assuming that you don't get it. So then it's just a really expensive card draw, so it's probably not great. If you're really desperate for value, you might take it, but otherwise it's a little too risky. So wouldn't value it very highly. Next up, we have Harkener of Dread. 5 mana 2/2 undead, taunt, death rattle, summon a 6/6 undead, taunt. So that's just too many stats, right? You get 2 different undeads. Potion of Madness is rotating in. Oh god, yeah, that's true. That is true. Oh shit. Yeah, that's a problem. I'm just gonna not play Shaman probably, man. This is gonna be triggering. But yeah, I mean, it's a very good card. That's the thing. It's like a lot of stats, but it's really bad if your opponent just is a priest and takes it. But yeah, it's a lot of stats, and since it's taunt, like, you know, a lot of these cards don't have taunt, so your opponent just ignores them and they're really slow. But this one has taunt, so they can't ignore it. But yeah, it's just, you know, weak to silence as well. But yeah, it's just good because it's just so many stats, and it's usually gonna work. But yeah, Potion of Madness gonna be annoying. Because that's the thing, is that, like, it is very good and you're gonna have to take it because it's very good, and then it's just gonna be, I really hope they just stop bringing back the set with Potion of Madness. Can they just, like, not? It's Gadget Sand, right? Can they just, like, stop bringing that set back, please? But anyway, Rockgill is the next one. 5 mana 3/6 undead Murloc, Battlecry, give your other minions death rattle, give your minions +1/+1. So it's already a 5 mana 3/6. You have to, which is obviously not very good, but you only need, I guess if you have like one other minion, this is already kind of okay, right? Not great, but it's like kind of vanilla basically. And obviously there's the potential that if you do have a lot of minions on board, then you kind of just win the game automatically, right? Assuming they can't specifically answer it somehow. They would need either like a Mass Silence or a Flame Strike or something that just kill everything, mostly. But yeah, it's not, it's a very, it seems like a very aggressively balanced way of rewarding Swarm payoff, basically. Just so it's like, it is conditional, but it's very strong and relative to how easy or how hard it would be to pull off, so does seem very, very good, but it's a legendary, so since the Murloc, there's potential you can have some Murloc synergies to discount it or something, but not very likely. And then I believe the there's 2 more. Yeah, this one is Blightblood Berserker, 8 mana 3/8 undead, taunt, lifesteal, reborn, death rattle. Deal 3 damage to a random enemy. Like, what? Why does it have so many keywords? Like, too many keywords. So, it's weird because obviously the idea would be that it's going to be really annoying and it's just going to heal you up a bunch. But if your opponent does have just like a giant rush minion, right, an 8/8 or 9/9 rush or something, then this thing isn't really getting enough value at that point. But I mean, still, man, it's like it does so much. Like, it's still kind of okay, right? It seems like it does enough that it's fine. It's just, it's a little bit weird. And yes, the death rattle should heal, right? Like, unless lifesteal doesn't go away when it's dead, right? I don't think so. So you get healed from the death rattle twice, potentially, assuming it doesn't get silenced, right? So you're getting a lot of heal. It's basically like, it's like a weird walking fountain that's just taunt instead of Rush Wind Fury, right? Slightly worse. Well, it's like similar stats, I guess, because it has the reborn. So yeah, it's just very annoying. The only thing is that, you know, you need some other kind of like actual value or swing to follow up, because it's just not gonna kill that much, because it only has 3 attack. But yeah, it is very good at keeping you alive. And I believe the last one we have here for Shaman is Overlord Drakuru. It's a 9 mana 6/8 Rush Wind Fury. After this attacks and kills a minion, resurrect it on your side. It is very important to note that it says after, which means that if this thing dies, it doesn't work. So you can't just run this into a giant minion that kills it. So that limits how good of things you can actually steal with this. I mean, it's very good if your opponent plays like a Blightwood Berserker, for example. You deal 2 damage to it, and then you just summon 2 of them yourself. So there's some things. And there's other like undeads. Like there were some of those big undead minions that actually had really low attack. So like there's some really good things you can steal with this in this meta right now. But a lot of the time you're going to be kind of restricted by that. So, but you'll be able to like steal a smaller minion and then run this into a bigger minion, or steal 2 small minions or something, right? Like a lot of potential value there. It's just that it's the only awkward thing is that it's a 9-mana card, and you know, you can't wait around with 9-mana cards. There's going to be times where it's just not that great on turn 9, and then it's just bad, right? So that's going to make it a little bit weird, but I mean, it's most of the time though, it's going to be it's a very potentially powerful card. So it's that. Oh, and there's even one more after this. So the other one is from the other side. 10-mana shadow spell, summon a copy of each minion in your hand. They attack random enemy minions, then die. What? It's terrible. Let's move on. Obviously, you're supposed to have very specific combos in mind. I was like thinking, it's like, I mean, I guess like with some of this stuff, it's kind of okay, but you know, I mean, in Arena, this is a never pick. So we'll move on. So they have so the summarize for Shaman, yeah, they have some of this early like Death Rattle synergy stuff, but and a couple this is a legendary. The thing is that the good cards are legendaries, and then I guess like some of these are like, this is good too. That's good, but it's epic. So Shaman did get a pretty good set, I think. But yeah, some of it's a little it's just a lot of it is kind of gimmicky, right? So it's gonna get like screwed by Potion of Madness, and it's gonna make it a little terrifying. But let me see. We got 2 more classes left. It looks like we are actually gonna finish here. I mean, at this point I will finish. Let's see. Hold up. I just got texted. The next one, Devourer of Souls. This is a 1-mana 1/3 undead legendary in Warlock. So after a friendly minion dies, gain its Death Rattle. Another class having some of these weird Death Rattle synergies. So the fact that it's in Warlock specifically, like, especially if there's upside, like, you don't mind drafting 1-mana 1/3s in Warlock. In some other classes, it can be a little weird because they just don't do enough and you run out of cards. But in Warlock, you have life taps, so you're pretty happy to just take a 1-mana 1/3 anyway. And this is an undead, and, you know, there's going to be some upsides for this, right? So this should be a pretty good card. It's a little... Sometimes it might be underwhelming for a legendary, but, you know, it's a good card you'd be happy to have in your deck. Let's see what some of these Death Rattles are in a little bit. But first off, this one is Shallow Grave, another Death Rattle synergy card. 2 mana, trigger a friendly minion's Death Rattle, then destroy it. So that means you get the Death Rattle twice, because you trigger the Death Rattle, and then you destroy the minion, and then the Death Rattle goes off again. And then if you happen to have this, then you'll get the Death Rattle 1 more time. So if you play this, a Death Rattle, and then this, you get 3 times the Death Rattle. But you lose the minion. But, okay. Overall, though, you don't really want to do this, right? Yeah, destroy is not like remove, like you kill the minion, so it dies. But yeah, this is a little too weird, right? Like, you don't actually want to destroy your own minions typically, so you probably don't take this ever. Next up, we have Scourge Supplies. 3 mana spell, draw 3 cards, choose one to discard. So, it's, usually, I mean, assuming you're not, like, actually gonna fatigue yourself, which can actually happen in Warlock, right? But assuming you're not worried about fatigue, this is actually just better than Arcane Intellect, because a lot of the times, you know, there's cards in your deck that aren't as good, so you're kind of happy to discard one. Most of the time, you might draw the 3 best cards in your deck and be really sad, but most of the time, you'll be pretty happy to just let one go, right? So, it's pretty good. You don't really need card draw in Warlock, obviously, because of life tap, but it's not bad to, you know, have this option as well a lot of the times. Even though, again, like, it's not always the best to actually litter your hand with things that don't actually just do things immediately. But yeah, since it's good enough that it seems like kind of okay, but for the reason I'm saying, like, you probably don't value it super highly, but it's fine. Especially if you have decks with a lot of bad cards, then it's okay. The only issues though also is that if you have a lot of bad cards, you probably aren't going to be winning on board and you're not going to be able to afford to play this. That's a little weird, but yeah, this is like a fine card. It's just not amazing. It'd probably be a lot better in like any other class, to be honest. But there are some discard synergies, so those could be relevant as well. For example, Walking Dead, 3 mana 2/5 undead, taunt minion. If you discard this minion, summon it. So, you know, just another combo there. It's a very hard combo to pull off because it's not even like you... Well, this one specifically, you actually have to like... It's just a straight 1 in 10. Anytime you play this, that this thing would have happened to be like in the exact 3 cards you draw, right? So that combo's a little sketchy, but yeah. Anyway, the point is that 3 mana 2/5 taunt is fine, right? Undead's nice too. And yeah, there's just potential upside that you might happen to be able to discard it. You probably don't want to force the whole discard thing very hard, but you know, it's upside for this card, right? So reasonable thing to pick it. Next up, we have Twisted Tether. 4 mana shadow spell. Destroy a minion. Give its stats to a random undead in your hand. Why? I mean, obviously, you need to have the... It's not even like you need to have an undead, right? I mean, you need to have an undead to get the bonus, but like, this is Assassinate. Like, Assassinate is totally fine, right? But then you can also just like, give like 8/8 of the stats to this thing. And then discard it to play for 0 mana, because a 3 mana 10/13 wasn't good enough. So you have to make it 0 mana. Why is this a thing? Completely nuts. Man, Paladin had that card, which is like not even as well. This is probably better than the Paladin card, right? The one that makes it a 1/1 and then hand buffs. Assuming you can actually get the hand buff, but Jesus. Oh, okay. Let's just move on. It's completely insane. You'll pick it every time you're offered it. Next up, we have Amorphous Slime. 5 mana, 5/3. Battle Cry. Discard a random undead. Death Rattle. Summon a copy of it. So you're giving up a lot of stats for this. Your opponent gets to see your discards, right? So they're gonna know. They know what it is. But yeah, like, you're giving up so many stats for this, then that makes it not gonna be worth it a lot of the time. If you can get a really big undead, obviously this is good, but it's, you know, this card's complete trash. If you have no undead, it's terrible, and even if you have a weak undead, it's still kind of terrible. So yeah, it is synergy with the other thing, but it's like you're taking such a risk by actually drafting this. Maybe if you just have, I don't know like exactly how many undeads you expect to have. If you have enough undeads that this will always trigger, then it's probably fine, but otherwise you just wouldn't want to actually draft this. But it's possible you just have enough undeads that it's fine. So that's going to be kind of the thing. But, you know, normally cards like this are unpickable, but this will probably be somewhat okay because of that, but it's still probably not going to be super consistent. That we move on to Savage Ymrajar. That's a pretty good guy too. That's a pretty good card to pull out of your hand. Jesus. 5 mana 7/7 rush. Undead. Valkyrie, discard 2 cards. So this is I mean it's a Doomguard that doesn't go face, but it's a 7 that has 2 extra stats. So pretty good. Yeah, honestly, like you're probably willing to even just pay this, but as well you have like the potential for some of these synergies and stuff. So you're probably willing to just discard 2 cards to get this amount of stats though. At least sometimes. You wouldn't want to discard like your win condition, but also obviously you can try to empty out your hand and then play this. But the thing is, like, you're not going to want to wait with a thing like this. You probably want to get it out of hand. So yeah, potential discard synergy should be a pretty good card because like Doomguard was a good card, but yeah, amazing because I mean, discarding 2 sucks, but it's just you'll probably be willing to do it. Actually, it's probably not super crazy unless you have particular synergy for it. Next up we have Soul Barrage, which is a 5 mana shadow spell. When you play or discard this, deal 6 damage randomly split among all enemies. So playing this sucks. That's not good. Like 6 mana randomly split is just not good for 5 mana. Like it's just not. Like that should cost like 3 or 4 at most, right? So yeah, like you really want to actually discard this to be able to play it for free, otherwise it's trash. And you're not going to be able to like super consistently discard it, right? Like one of the best ways you'd be able to do it would be if you happen to have like this guy, right? But yeah, otherwise like this is just not good enough a card to actually play it. So I don't think like the discard stuff should not be consistent enough to really want to reach to something like this, but obviously it could work if you have all the setups and go for it, right? It's just a little inconsistent. Next up we have Infantry Reanimator. 6 mana 4/4 Battle Cry. Resurrect a friendly undead, give it reborn. So again, you have to have a reborn that an undead that died, which is, I mean, makes it probably a lot easier than, I mean, especially it's a lot easier in a lot of these conditions where you had to have like a reborn die last turn or something, right? It's going to be significantly easier to just have had an undead die at any point in the game, right? So you should get something, and you're going to get like, you're going to actually have an undead. It comes back with reborn as well, so like even if you pull out, like honestly, like a 2-drop, like if you were to theoretically pull a 2-drop, I don't know exactly what stat lines are there for undeads, but like a 4/4 with a 3/2 with reborn, like that's already really good for 6 mana. Not like crazy, but like it's efficient. So if you get basically anything above a 1-drop, this is really good. So it just seems good, and there's potential to get stuff that's really good with this. So yeah, just independently good enough card. Independently as if, I mean, you do have to have undeads, but you should have undeads, so should be pretty good. Let's see, this is the last one, and then Warrior is the last class. So the last one for Warlock here, Darkhand Drathier. It's 8 mana 6/6 undead lifesteal. At the end of your turn, deals 6 damage to the enemy hero. So let's see, yeah, so you fireball your opponent in the face, you also heal for 6. It's just a lot of health swing. If you could like cheat this out, it'd be insane, obviously. And also, like, you know, your opponent's gonna have to kill it, obviously. Unless they can kill you immediately, which is hard after you healed for 6. And then you're gonna get more healing, so you get like a whole bunch of healing. And since you're a warlock, you actually care about that quite a bit more than you would in other classes potentially. So it's not bad, but still, I mean, the only issue is that you're still just playing an 8 mana 6/6, which is pretty darn bad. So it's a little situational. It's going to be really good in certain games, but it's a little weird. If you can, obviously it's a way to high roll like your undead, resurrect or something, but probably not a great card, but also it's not a terrible thing to have, right? I think it's like okay, but there's much better legendaries, right? So there's just other things you can do that are way more consistent. That's it for Warlock. Warlock has a bit of, I don't know. They got like all this discard stuff, which kind of ruins the set for them, I think. But they also got Twisted Tether, which is like one of the best cards ever. So, you know. Yeah, just a little bit too much conditional stuff for Warlock for me to feel great about their set. So, yeah. But not completely terrible. Oh, let me send one text really fast. And the last one we have here is Warrior. So Warrior, 1 mana 1/3, Sun Fury Champion. After you cast a fire spell, deal 1 damage to all minions. How many fire spells are you going to have in Warrior? Let's check this set really fast just to see. There are a couple fire spells, actually, several fire spells, but still you're probably not going to have that many fire spells. And do you actually want to cast... Do you actually want to deal 1 damage to all minions? Not necessarily. So this one's a little weird. I mean, if you have like... The idea would be if you have a defensive-minded deck and you happen to have a bunch of fire spells, then yeah, okay, you can play this to get some cheap board clears, but I mean, otherwise, you're not expecting much for this. If anything, it might be awkward that you can't play your fire spells without actually blowing up your own board, right? It could be awkward, but I mean, sometimes you just play as a 1 mana 1/3, right? It's okay, but, you know, not great. I think if anything, the effect is, you know, risky. So... Next one is Blazing Power. 2 mana fire spell. Give a minion +1/+1. Repeat for each damaged friendly character. So, okay. Each damaged friendly character. It works with your face, so assuming you're not at full health. This is always at least +2/+2, but if you have more damage stuff, it could be better. Thing is like compared to like Rampage or something, Rampage isn't that great of a card, okay, but like Rampage is 2 mana, give a damage minion +3/+3. You have more flexibility on which one you buff with this, but you would want to buff with initiative ideally anyway. And you're not that likely. I think it's a harder condition to have. You would need to have multiple. You need your face damage and also multiple minions to make this better than Rampage, basically. So. It's a little bit weird. How does this work with the previous card? This is after, so like this is gonna resolve and then this will happen. So it doesn't work at all. So like this seems weak. So I don't like this very much. It's not like completely terrible because you should get a 2/2 buff, but it doesn't seem very good. So, most of the time. It's a little bit too conditional. But it could have its moments, obviously. Next up, we have Embers of Strength. This is a 2 mana fire spell. Summon 2 1/2 guards with Taunt, Mana Thirst. Give them +1/+2. So, 2 mana for 2 1/2 taunts is already fine. Right, like you could just play that on turn 2 and be kind of okay with it. But yeah, mana thirsting for 6 and getting, what is that? You get 2/2/4 taunts for just 2 mana. But you have to wait until turn 6. It's a little bit late, but I mean you're pretty happy to get 2. You're pretty happy to get 2/2/4 taunts for 2 mana later on. Because like their taunt, they actually do something. So yeah, that's nice. So you'd be very happy to draft this because it's pretty good because like you don't have to wait, but also you're pretty happy to wait. So yeah, good card. Next up, Asphodon the Grand Shield. 3 mana 3/3. Battle Cry. Cast a copy of the last spell your opponent played. Why? Why? Why is this a thing? It's gonna be so troll. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I can't. There's a lot of things you could do with this, obviously. Your opponent plays Puzzle Box, and then yeah, I get my own Puzzle Box. Yeah, so I mean, it should be pretty good, right? The only problem is that sometimes people just don't play spells and they kill you with minions, right? And they bash you to death with neutral minions. But yeah, other than that though, I mean, like most people are gonna play some spells, and you can, you know, there's a lot of good things you can do with this, right? It's, you basically cast it for free. That's the other thing. So yeah, it just seems very, very good. It's just that sometimes it's not gonna work. It's not like this card didn't even have to like be in your hand to see the spell get cast, right? You can just top deck this. They could have played Flame Strike 6 turns ago, and then you could just get a Flame Strike, right? So yeah, like it should be like very good most of the time. It's just not always going to be like ideal. You might not want to like play the spell that they played at the moment they played it, and they might replace it with something else before you actually do it. It's like, it could be weird, but yeah, like it's always, this card's never gonna be bad. It's only bad if your opponent just plays all their spells and then coins. Cast a copy. I think this would be random, but I'm not sure. I think you just play it and it would be random targets, I think. I'm not entirely sure though. But yeah, it's a good card in any case. Next up, we have Last Stand. 4 mana, draw a taunt minion. Double its stats. So, reason to not draft Annoytron, apparently. I guess it's not that bad, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, so yeah, 4 mana is just a lot. Like, if you draw Ascension, I guess it's okay, right? You get effective like an 8 mana 6/10 taunt. Like, it's not that bad. You need something like that big or bigger, ideally much bigger, right? So it's just a little bit it's a little bit hard. Hey, I had like a 12-win run with, or maybe it was a 10-win run with the one that only doubles the health of beasts in Druid, which is 4 mana. Like, you can rarely make stuff like this kind of work, but you need to have, like, you know, you need to have the taunt minions. You don't just like pick this ever, unless you just happen to look at your deck and be like, oh, I have nothing but 7-drop taunts, right? In that case, you actually probably want to take this, but not very often that happens. Because it only draws taunt minions. It's not like you can get screwed, right? So you have some level of control, but you know, the average deck, not necessarily going to work. So next up, Light of the Phoenix. 4 mana fire spell. Draw 2 cards. Costs 1 less for each damaged friendly character. Okay, so again, like, you get 1 kind of freebie off of your face. And then this is Arcane Intellect. So it's already kind of okay, right? But Arcane Intellect's not a great card. But from there, you can get potentially more damage minions. And if you do happen to get like a board full of damage minion, this goes down to 0 cost, right? Which becomes very good, because then you just play it anytime. Take a couple trades, and then this is like 0 or 1 mana potentially. So this one does seem good, because it's playable enough, even if you're not really getting the ideal pull of it. And then it's fine. So, yeah. Warrior also typically wants card draw and doesn't have enough card draw, just in general roles. So I think this is going to be a pretty good card for Warrior most of the time. So there's a lot of times Warrior, even the value Warriors generate random stuff, but they don't actually draw. So that's gonna, yeah, I think it's very good for Warrior to have that, because Warrior has consistency issues as a result of that. That'll help. Next up is Sunfire Smithing. This is a 4 mana fire spell. Equip a 4/2 sword. Give a random minion in your hand +4/+2. Yeah, so a 4 mana, I say this a lot, like a 4/2 weapon's actually not very good for 4 mana. It's a little awkward actually. It's worse in ping classes though. But like to me a 4 mana 4/2 weapon just doesn't feel great. But you know, you're getting a 4/2 hand buff as well. So that's pretty nice. There's no guarantee you'll be able to use that buff immediately, but I mean, you happen to buff an Noetron, pretty insane. Noetron goes to a 5/4 Divine Shield, basically a Sunwalker. Very good. But yeah, 4/2 hand buff is nice. It's pretty terrifying. But yeah, I mean, like, it's just a lot from this card, right? So it's a very good card. So you'll take this most of the time, I think. And then, how many more do we have? Got a few more. Next up is Thorbalar. I didn't skip one, right? No. 4 mana 4/4 Elemental Rush Death Rattle. Go dormant. Cast a fire spell to revive. Thorbalar. Revives maximum of 2 times. So, you know, there are some fire spells with this new set that we've seen. Some of them are decently pickable, so you may actually have fire spells. This is a legendary, so you know you won't see it much. But yeah, I mean the thing is, like, a 4 mana 4/4 rush is already okay, right? It could be bad that it actually takes up a board spot, obviously, if you can't revive it, but usually that's not too big an issue. But it should be like a decent amount of the time that you can at least revive this once. Right, and if you know you have this in your deck, you might hold your fire spells a little bit longer and stuff, so pretty reasonable to think that you can at least get like an extra one of these, and then it's pretty good, right? That's getting like comparable value to like what a Rat King is effectively going to do in a game a lot of the time, right? You'll only get it once basically, and you might do this earlier because you can cast the fire spell immediately, so this thing should actually be pretty good a lot of the time, but obviously if you don't have fire spells, it's a bit, you know, limited. But at the worst, a 4 mana 4/4 rush is not bad. So, should be a pretty good card. Next up, we have Disruptive Spellbreaker. 5 mana 4/5. At the end of your turn, your opponent discards a spell. Why? Oh, God. Why is this a thing? Help. I don't understand why this needs to be a thing. Oh, that's so triggering. You hope that card's banned. This is so frustrating. Because, like, you know, you only get, like, sometimes you only get 2. You only get, like, 2 spells in your entire deck, and then your opponent just plays this and discards it. Like, that's not okay. That's, like, so unfun, actually. They probably should just... it's probably not even that great of a card, honestly, but like they probably should ban it from Arena because it's just not fun. Like, why do you want to have this in the game, you know? Maybe they want the disruption constructed, but even like Jesus, like, yeah, it's like not super understated, right? Like it's just tell them we just don't want this card, just put it back, because like it's probably like a 4 out of 5 card, I want to say, but like, yeah, it's just so toxic. And then here we have the last card here, which is Silver Fury Stalwart. 6 mana 4/8 Taunt Rush, another Taunt Rush with cannot be targeted with spells or hero powers. Don't they usually say cannot be targeted? This one says can't be targeted. My immersion is ruined, game. But yeah, so wait, that's the thing, that's very good. The only thing is that the part of the reason it's not super busted is just because sometimes there just isn't going to be a spell to discard, right? That's the thing. That's the reason it's not like a 5 out of 5, I think. But anyway, so can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. So I mean, a 4/8, I've said like a 6 mana 4/8 is probably like a decent card, right? But this also has taunt and rush, so you get to choose where it goes initially, and can't be targeted, so 2 things that make it completely invulnerable to being weak to removal, right? so it's pretty strong. It's just not, it's not crazy because it just doesn't have that many stats. But yeah, I mean, you're always, it's a very good card in that you're always, you know what you're going to get out of this. You're always going to get what you want out of it. You just, obviously you don't play this into a giant minion, because that's the only way it doesn't get good value, is if your opponent has a giant minion. But why are you going to play your rush into a giant minion, right? So it's just very solid, and that's pretty much it for that one. So pretty good. Flavor text, that's relevant, yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's it for Warrior. So Warrior, they have some of these weird couple weird conditional cards that are a little weird, but overall pretty good set for Warrior. Warrior gets a lot of bad sets sometimes, so this one's fine. I think they'll be pretty happy with this set overall. It's just obviously they're nowhere near the power level of like Rogue, for example. So that's the I think that's the main takeaway from this whole review, right? Like, there were a lot of classes that got some really weird conditional stuff, but like Paladin got an insanely good set, and Rogue got insanely good set. There were a couple other classes that got like decent sets, but nothing else anywhere near the level. Of course, we're not talking about Death Knight, because we went through all the Death Knight cards in the other review, which maybe I'll link above. I'm probably not going to remember to put the card up there. But yeah, also obviously Death Knight got some pretty good cards as well. So big winners of this whole thing, it seems like, are Death Knight, Paladin, and Rogue, and everyone else is quite a bit behind them. But no class got like completely screwed, right? Or no, there was one. I forget which class was it that got like, I forget which class it was. There was one class that got completely screwed. Which one was that? The Mage was a little weird, but Shaman was actually better than I thought. Warlock wasn't great, but yeah. I don't think any class got like really screwed, actually. Druid was a little weird, but they also had good things, yeah. So everything was kind of fine. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see for sure how this meta plays out with, you know, the whole new class thing being a thing and all of that. But yeah, so overall, yeah, exciting time for Hearthstone, I guess. So I'm not sure how much time I'm actually gonna have to stream the first week, but yeah, we'll see. At least after the first week, I'll be able to play a lot of this meta, so it'll be very exciting to play Death Knight and all that stuff. So with that, thanks a lot for hanging out, everyone, here on YouTube. Say goodbye to YouTube in the Twitch chat if you want to. But yeah, thanks a lot again. If you want to check out the other reviews, we have the Death Knight review again, and also the neutral reviews should be in separate videos as well. So thanks a lot again. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.